when I hire, I look first for integrity. You have to have values. That's the foundation of all trust and working together and doing the right thing for customers, partners, and the company.
You can have a team of individuals who are highly agile, but if they don't march to the same cultural beat and sort of the undertones of what makes an organization successful, they will fail.
The culture and the context in which people find themselves drives behavior and drives whether they're going to actually, even if they turn up with all the things they need, whether they're going to be agile or not.
To learn new skills, whether they be technology or management or communication, things that they need to improve themselves so that they can take the next steps in becoming even more higher impact and higher performing. Having that ability to experiment and fail is fundamental, I think, to the growth mindset.
Today, we are lucky to have our three interesting minds, three panelists. The first one is our lady. It's Susan Mackey. Susan Mackey is the CEO of Growth Mindset Institute and also the co-founder and a member of the research team of Professor Carol Dweck. And we also have Michael DeStefano. Michael is the president of Asia Pacific of Korn Ferry. Yeah, and we also have Ron. Okay, welcome. So how are you doing?
What we're doing is, so Korn Ferry tries to study everything in the workplace. We like to say that we know more about human performance at work than any other company on the planet. Although I assure you, Microsoft, if they really dig into the data, they know more about human performance at work than any other company on the planet.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, so we've kind of study competencies, we study frameworks, we study networks, we study teams, we study leadership, personality, culture, you name it, every kind of dimension. And effectively 5 has sort of risen to the top, not only for operating in a purpose-driven and a growth mindset environment, but also one that would sustain digital transformation and sort of enable and empower your organization to succeed as you move forward following your purpose. And so quickly, and I believe there'll be a visual aid, so you don't have to write all these down, but number 1 is empowerment and alignment. So again, if we've got our purpose straight, do we all agree what are we trying to do in the organization? Then does the organization foster an environment where we feel empowered to do our job, but also aligned between one another so that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. And again, we're all moving forward in what's becoming a very flexible, very fluid and dynamic operating environment. The second one is openness and transparency. So the research would indicate that the command and control days, the hierarchies are really flattening and becoming a lot more autonomous amongst either small groups or departments or regions or even individuals. And I think that we see organizations that operate in open and transparent cultures and environments. They're able to achieve things faster. There's a much higher level of trust and mutual support on one another, and that moves things down the path. Number 3 is connectivity, and I think that's what we're talking about here, whether it be new technology tools or whether it's on and off, or whether it's I'm going to use this tool for this mode of communication and this other platform for something else, and really starting to organize, hey, this is how we're going to communicate. This is when we'll use this tool. This is the platform that we'll use. And companies that really streamline that and organize it and get consistency are able, obviously, to achieve things a lot faster. Number 4 is discipline and focus. So somebody's got to measure all this stuff. So it's wonderful to have a purpose. It's wonderful to be flat and open and transparent. But we got to know exactly what are we trying to achieve, when are we trying to achieve it by, and how are we going to measure it to understand if we're being successful or not. And then finally, all of that kind of comes together around this magical concept of agility. And so we find that the companies that are the most agile, that can control and contain all these other 4 ingredients, those are the ones that outperform. And the most agile, our research would indicate that the most agile companies outperform their peer group by almost any financial metric by somewhere about 25%. Korn Ferry does a lot of recruiting. And so if anybody ever asks me, what's the number 1 thing I should look for when I'm recruiting talent? My answer is always recruit the agile. So you can measure for agility how predisposed somebody is, how well they do in an ambiguous environment. Do they know what to do when they don't know what to do? That kind of thing. But only 15% of us have the maximum quotient for agile thinking, agile predisposition. So companies that can get the most of those 15%ers who are truly agile, who embody this framework for digital transformation and sustainability, driven around purpose, are definitely going to succeed. So I think if I could offer one piece of advice with regards to how can an organization look at their own transformation and sustainability, I would say take a look at those 5 dimensions.
Okay.
I'm curious though. So if you hire most agile people, so I mean, look, measurement's a whole hot issue because a lot of biases in personality measurements, a lot of skewing. I'm curious if you take you can hire the most agile and you put them in a context that's not supportive and doesn't have the psychological safety, what happens? And I think that's what Microsoft really understood from the perspective of culture and supporting individuals to grow. You know, you can have, I think one of the things Microsoft looked at is talent and realized, you know, they could go to the top schools, but that didn't mean that it was going to grow the company, that they had to have greater diversity in who they actually looked at and considered as talent. I mean, and I think that's one of the interesting questions around that notion of talent.
Yeah, we'll let Ron weigh in from a Microsoft perspective, sure. But, you know, the second thing I always say with regards to recruiting is you get hired for what you know and you get fired for who you are. And so you can have a team of individuals who are highly agile, but if they don't march to the same cultural beat and sort of the undertones of what makes an organization successful, they will fail. So you're absolutely right. It's kind of like chocolate and peanut butter coming together to make that delicious candy. You can't have agility without culture, and you can't have culture without agility.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Right, Michael. I was going to add that for me, when I hire, I look first for integrity. Right, you have to have values. That's the foundation of all trust and working together and doing the right thing for customers, partners, and the company. And then more and more, I've looked for the agility or growth mindset. So I try to ask questions that for candidates to demonstrate that they've already demonstrated agility and growth mindset in their prior roles, right, in their prior jobs. And so I think that that's the hallmark of success, because it's going forward, because it's so hard to know what's going to be needed in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, right? And so you hire for people who have the integrity to do the right thing and make the right judgment, and then the agility and growth mindset to be able to learn fast and be willing to try new things and experiment and fail and learn from that and get stronger. And so I think it's not easy, but I think that's what I'm typically looking for.
So we've built a assessment tool. It's taken us 2.5 years. We did it on the data of 5,000 people initially. So we can actually assess fixed mindset triggers and growth mindset responses. And we've actually just translated that into Mandarin. So ILS in China we've coded it in China, by the way. So that assessment is now live in China, which was an interesting process. What's interesting research in the first 5,000, we did it in a global, and what's interesting is how mindset and integrity are linked. So that sometimes people who have a large component of fixed mindset triggers when they're fearful, because the context makes them fearful, that integrity can drop down. So when we measure growth mindset cultures, we see much more cutting corners, cheating, when we see a more fixed mindset culture. In a growth mindset culture, we see a different response. And I think what's been interesting is measuring where people are within terms of their mindset, but also understanding a mixture of fixed, and that back to the point of two things. I think one, the culture and the context in which people find themselves drives behavior and drives whether they're going to actually, even if they turn up with all the things they need, whether they're going to be agile or not. The second part I think that really matters is in mindset is really around self-determination. And so Michael touches on that, and then you've backed it up a bit, Lauren, which is this idea that mindset is made up of really self-determination, which is autonomy, mastery. So the sense of, do I have autonomy? Do I have a say, or am I able to do the things I need? Do I have a combination of the capability and the capacity, the mental capacity? And then do I have sense of mastery? Am I supported to master new things? Because I may have a weakness that I need to work on, and am I supported to grow and develop beyond that? And then the last one is relatedness, which is very key, which is purpose. And what's interesting with relatedness is that you cannot have accountability if you do not have clear clarity with feedback along the way. It just doesn't happen. So it's interesting how this idea of purpose really ties back into self-determination theory, which is what drives motivation and growth.
So before we go further about the Microsoft case, I'm very happy we have brought a very interesting topic about the mindset, because Michael shared about the 5 dimensions. All the dimensions, all the behaviors actually are driven by mindset. And just now, Ron and Susan, you have both raised keywords, growth mindset. And could we have the Susan to introduce more about the concept of this growth mindset to help us understand better? Yeah.
Thank you. So
the concept of the growth mindset. Yeah.
Let's start with the definition. So we've got to be very careful, because in version 1 of the research, we talked about fixed versus growth. We're now in what is version 3, and we're starting to also understand growth mindset and brain chemicals. So we're starting to really understand how the reward systems of the brain work with growth mindset. Mm-hmm. And so I think the first thing I've got to frame is that it's a meaning system. So your mindset makes meaning. And that drives whether you have a fixed mindset response or a growth mindset response, and a mixture of both. There's no one on the planet that doesn't have a fixed mindset moment. And so when you're faced with a challenge or a setback or getting out of your comfort zone, what's the narrative that goes on in the organization and in your own head about how you view the situation? And so this is like a working hypothesis. You kind of, because remember, your mindset is affected by the context and the people that you work with. So if an everyday event brings about like a defensive feeling, then, you know, do you have strategies to put yourself back into? And so I think one of the things is understanding what triggers your defense mechanisms is key, but also then to build a more resilient self-system. And Microsoft, I think, has done that beautifully in the culture, because what they've tried to do in building this self-system in each individual is to say, look, we need a learn-it-all culture, not a know-it-all. You know, Satya Nadella talks about how learn-it-all will always outstrip a know-it-all, even if they have more capability when they start. And so this the idea of being supportive rather than critical, being brave rather than, and there's actually an interesting neuroscience construct around courage and fear. We actually have a mechanism in the brain that can actually overcome fear by leaning into challenges, and it's called the courage reflex. And what's interesting about the courage reflex is when you lean in, when you say, the friction I'm feeling here is this, and the only thing that's going to help me grow is effort, being uncomfortable, and actually taking things on. Now, with effort, in mindset, effort is a big conversation, because it's not effort that if you're not getting anywhere, that's going to help you. It's about, hang on, this effort may not be getting anywhere. What other strategies can we try? Can I get some help from someone else? So the effort bit's really important.
Yeah, thank you all. It's very inspiring and insightful, but the high P hours always goes faster, right? So it's time for us to say goodbye and wrap up this panel. And thank you all again for your time and wisdom. And I hope like next time we can meet offline.